Thank you. Thank you very much. Right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Planning Committee for tonight. I'd like to welcome everyone that's present this evening, members, officers, members of the public, as well as anybody who's watching the recording on YouTube or live. Before the meeting starts, I'd like to invite the committee member and scrutiny manager, James Lovegrove, to explain how proceedings will work.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit in front of you. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live, and at which point it will turn red and you are able to speak. When public participants joining us this evening are invited to speak by the chair, your microphones will be made live by the committee officer. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on the microphone unit in front of you. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room, and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will have a casting vote. Are there any questions before we proceed with the meeting? No? Thank you. Back to you then, Chair.
Right. Thank you very much. Apologies for absence. I have received no apologies this evening. First item of business is the minutes from our meeting of the 25th of February, as well as the 6th of March 2025. I propose that we take as read and approve the minutes of both of those meetings as a true record of proceedings. Could I have a seconder? I'm taking both of these together, by the way, so it's seconding both. Yep, I see Councillor Prescott. And does anyone have any comments on either set of minutes? Nope, I'm seeing no one indicate. Could we have a vote, please, James?
Thank you, Chair. That motion is carried.
Thank you very much. All right, notification of any other business. I've had no other business notified officially. However, I'm sure James has probably asked a number of members, have you registered for your virtual parking permits? If you have not done so, please do so. There is an email in your inbox, and I'm sure committee services and democratic services will be happy to support with any questions, queries, or assistance that members require. Item number 4, Chair's announcements. Number 1, recording. In accordance with council policy, this meeting is being recorded. The recording will be available on both the council's YouTube channel as well as the council's ModGov site alongside the documents from tonight's meeting. Number 2, declarations of interest. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under the chair's announcements on the agenda. Number 3, this is just clarity for our registered speakers tonight. Members of the public, where there's only one member of the public speaking in support or against the application, will have a total of 5 minutes to make their representations. I will generally give you a warning when you've got 1 minute left. There is a clock that will pop up in the bottom corner of the large screens as well, if you're minded to keep an eye on that. If I'm giving you a notice that you've got a certain amount of time left, I will do my best not to interrupt you mid-flow and be as unintrusive as possible. And I ask that at the end of 5 minutes, you please wrap things up promptly. Thank you. And as a reminder for members of the public, matters presented to the committee should relate to planning considerations only. If there are other matters introduced which go beyond the scope of what this committee can consider, I'll ask you to stop and just refocus on the items that the committee is able to consider, just in the interests of ensuring that you have the maximum amount of time to make your relevant representations about planning matters. And when it comes down to questions as well from members of these are for members of the committee to ask questions to the applicants and the objectors. And if those responding could ensure that you are giving answers to questions that are concise and informative as opposed to full speeches, that would be very, very welcome. We'd very much appreciate that. Thank you. Right, section 4.8.23a of the Council's Constitution, for the purpose of clarification, in order to vote on an agenda item at this meeting, a member must be present for the entirety of the debate and consideration for that item. If a member leaves the room at any point of the item, they will not be able to vote. As always, colleagues, if you need to take a break, if it's appropriate, just raise your hand, let me know, send me a subtle message, and we will pause things so that everybody can be accommodated and facilitated during the meeting. Right, so with that, we have got a number of people presenting in the public participation on the items tonight. I have Ms. Lynn Bogey in respect of item number 6, Mr. Simon Warner, who's the applicant's representative on item 6, and Ms. Claire McNulty, who's an objector on item number 7. So that is all of the announcements out of the way. Can crack on with business. Item number 6 is application 24/02606/FP, land west of Tuthill House, Kelshaw Tops, Thurfield, Hertfordshire. I'm going to pass over to Anne MacDonald to present the report on this item.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. There's been a published update for this application which sets out that the 4 biodiversity net gain conditions were unfortunately missed off the published report, and they are listed in the update that was published on the website yesterday. There's also additional clarification on the map that was attached to the original section 106, because at the time of writing the report I wasn't able to locate that map, and that map's being produced for you in the update alongside an image of the proposed site location plan, which shows that the landscaping areas protected in the original section 106 are carried forward in the layout of the proposed site plan. There are landscaping conditions recommended, which obviously will firm up details if planning permission is granted in due course, and the section 106 is still outstanding, so that's a matter that will be considered later on as well. I have one oral update tonight, and this is a little bit wordy, so I apologise for that. It's in relation to condition 10. I'll read out the start of condition 10. It currently says, prior to the occupation, the development hereby permitted the vehicle-to-vehicle intervisibility displays of, and then the rest of the condition carries on. We're seeking to amend the first opening few words of condition 10 to no dwelling hereby permitted shall be occupied until the vehicle-to-vehicle ... carries on. And it's just to give us greater kind of ability to enforce the condition appropriately in context of the fact the land is outside of the red line application site. This is a full application for the redevelopment of the site with 3 detached houses. Can I have the first slide, please? Next slide, please. Oh, can I go back one? There should have been the matter. That's the one, right? Thank you very much. I'm sure members are familiar with this site. It's obviously been before you a couple of years ago, which I'll come on to in my presentation in a minute. The site is outside of, but adjacent to the settlement boundary of Thurfield, and adjoins the Thurfield Conservation Area on its western boundary. I've got quite a few slides of the site and the lane, so I'll whiz through these quite quickly. Can I have the next slide, please? This is an image of the lane looking to the west with the application site on the left-hand side behind the row of trees. You can just about make out the close boarded fence that runs along the lane boundary. Next slide, please. This is looking to the east, and you can see the neighbouring houses on the edge of the Thurfield settlement area. So you can see that it is adjacent to the settlement boundary. Next slide, please. This is the existing access point into the site, which will be reused in the proposed development. Next, can you skip over the next slide, please? Next slide, please. Thank you. This is within the site looking to the west, and again, you can see the roof of the neighbouring house in the distance. Next slide, please. This is looking to the east, and obviously you can see that the site comprises a large area of hard standing, and under the new terminology in the updated NPPF in December 2024, this site is now classed as brownfield land within the new definitions of previously developed land. Next slide, please. Another view. Next slide, please. Again within the site. Next slide, please. Again within the site, looking up to the access point. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So also the site layout plan. Again, you can see the extent of hard standing within the site. Next slide, please. So this is the proposed site layout plan for 3 dwellings. Each house has generous parking, garden areas and provision of EV parking. The western end of the site is to be protected as a biodiversity net gain area. And the design of the house is to replicate a sort of modern style farmstead with 2 barn-esque style dwellings and a sort of farmhouse as such. Next slide, please. That's the elevations and floor plan for the house in plot 1, which is the house on the north side of the site. Next slide, please. The house in plot 2, which is on the south side of the site. Next slide, please. And this is the end house in plot 3. Attached to the committee report is the appeal decision letter for the 2021 scheme. In that appeal decision, the inspector only dismissed the appeal on the grounds that he felt that the house in plot 3 was too large. The red outline dwelling shown is the former size of the house that was dismissed for comparison purposes to the house that's proposed now. Officers consider that this reduction in size does overcome the inspector's previous concerns about the size of the dwelling, and the application is recommended for approval on that basis. Next slide, please. That's the floor layout plan for that dwelling. Next slide, please. This is from the lane. It shows that the houses have sort of kept set well back, and it's considered that the development will have a spectral impact, visual impact in the context of the lane. Next slide, please. And that's just an artistic impression of the development. The proposed development is considered to be a high quality formal development on a brownfield windfill site close to the village settlement edge, and will not have harm on the character of the conservation area or nearby neighbour community. The resolution tonight for you members is to grant planning permission subject to the recommended conditions, the variation to condition 10, and the completion of an appropriate section 106 legal agreement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anne. Do members of the committee have any questions for Anne? Yes, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I've got one, and it's probably a really unfair question. I don't think you'll be able to answer it. But I just wondered, that 30-mile-an-hour limit, will it be extended beyond the end of this development were it to be granted?
Highways haven't indicated that they will do that. They've raised no objection on the basis of the layout of the lane and the access point as existing, and they have not indicated within the conditions that they would be seeking the developer to fund that change in Section 278 works.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Prescott.
Thank you, Chair. Did I hear you correctly that the appeal was denied purely and simply for the size of the design?
Yes.
Well, that's not my reading of it. There are plenty of other reasons why it was dismissed.
I disagree with you on that point, I'm afraid. When you read it through, there was no objection it's being outside the settlement boundary, and he objected to the design of the house in plot 3.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peace.
This might be another difficult question, sorry. There was a public right of way to the right of the site as it was on the screen. Do you know if that public right of way would allow somebody to get down into the village as far as, say, the school or village centre?
I understand that there is to be a connection point to the public right of way, but that detail's not. There's a condition, I think, covering the landscaping details and the boundary treatments, and that would come, the details that would come through under that condition.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any further questions for Anne? No, I'm seeing no one indicating, in which case I shall move us on to our registered speakers. The first person to speak is Ms. Lynn Bogey, who will be speaking as an objector to this application. Ms. Bogey, you've got 5 minutes.
Just before I begin, Chair, ask your indulgence to respond to the recent update, which only came to my notice.
I'm afraid that's outside the scope of this committee's terms of reference. You've got to limit yourself to your 5-minute presentation. If you want to refer to matters within that time, then feel free.
It's a very short time, obviously. Thank you. NHDC's planning committee has, as a matter of principle, determined this site as to be unsuitable for residential development over and over and over again in recent times. I invite you to consider why this is so, and why Thurfield Parish Council and so many of us in Thurfield are so implacably opposed to development of this site. Ms MacDonald puts before you in her report only perceived benefits. True, she mentions that this proposal fails to comply with plan policies, but she rushes you straight past that in paragraph 3.4 with a however, in which she quotes selectively and I'm afraid highly misleadingly from the NPPF. In relation to a previous proposal to develop this site, some of you will recall she claimed non-compliance with plan policy was a technical conflict and bizarrely not a planning harm. Consider though a very similar application to NHDC relating to Barkway determined on appeal less than 2 months ago. In that case, the council's statement of case read as follows. The site is outside the defined settlement boundary of Barkway, which is designated as a Category A village, and as a result is within the rural area beyond the Green Belt. The development does not comply with policy SP2 of the local plan, nor does it comply with any of the other criteria for acceptable development in the rural area beyond the Green Belt set out in policy TGB1 of the local plan. So far, exactly the same as here then. But the officer in that case goes on as follows. The council maintains the view that the development is unacceptable in principle. The council considers, taken together, significant weight should be attributed to these two policy conflicts. The inspector in Barkway agreed and dismissed the appeal. Now, who was the author of that? Oh, none other than Miss MacDonald here. Perhaps she can explain why she's not advised you that this development is unacceptable in principle, or that the policy conflict carries significant weight in this case. She claims the modest benefits of this scheme outweigh the harms, but she's overstated the benefits and not included in her report, still less given appropriate weight to, the significant planning harms. There are harms which numerous case officers have identified in relation to previous proposals to develop this site, and generations of planning committees have found to exceed the benefits, even when the tilted balance is applied. You're the decision makers, but Miss MacDonald has produced a report which does not perform or does not properly inform you and your decision making. I just don't have time now to address all the relevant planning harms. There are a lot. But by way of flavour, let me offer you a quote from a previous officer's report, and I noticed Ms MacDonald showed you no slides of the local road layout. The issue, he said, is straightforward. The application site, which is on a 60-mile-an-hour deregulated road, is not connected to the village of Thurfield by a safe and convenient route for pedestrians, and the scheme makes no provision to provide such. This cannot be characterised as either safe or inclusive. During the winter months in particular, pedestrian access along the Kelshaw Road will be hazardous, as it is unlit and narrow, and there is no safe space for pedestrians, pushchairs, wheelchairs or mobility scooters. The committee in that case concluded, if approved, this would amount to the promotion of unsustainable development at variance with the NPPF and its aim to promote sustainable patterns of well-connected, inclusive development, and would also be at variance with the council's own policies. Now, all this remains true, but there's no mention of any of this in the report before you. You should also consider how this committee, which as a public body is required to act consistently, could justify approval of an application which is almost identical to the previously refused application, refused also on appeal. And I take the point here that the inspector made absolutely clear that since he was refusing it on appeal grounds, he did not consider any other grounds. I think you've been misled in that regard. This has such poor and dangerous connectivity to the village. Now, in relation to the development at Tussex, which is also in Thurfield and which you've recently decided, with office support, you thought it was unacceptable for a development within the settlement boundary in a 30-mile-an-hour zone to go ahead without the provision of a pavement. Ms MacDonald reproduces in her report this remark by the inspector that it's all well. It's really not true. Millions and millions of pounds and thousands of man-hours have been spent developing a sound local plan and associated policies with clear and carefully considered settlement boundaries and a sensible and robust hierarchy of development. This site was considered for inclusion as an allocated site. It was put forward as such, but was rejected from the plan. It's outside the settlement boundary of a small Category A village, which has, since adoption of the plan, seen approval for 18 new homes, a significantly greater contribution than that required under the plan. It does not need and cannot support more luxury housing, and residential development in this unsustainable and unsuitable location outside the development limits and breach of plan policies cannot be justified. I would suggest you should insist on a properly balanced officer's report before moving to a decision on this application. Honestly, I don't know what we're doing here. This application is clearly invalid. I've tried over months to get an explanation from the officers as to why they disagree, but they've offered not a single reason why they believe I'm incorrect, and to refuse to let me see the applicant's representations on the issue.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bogey. That's time. Thank you. All right, colleagues, do you have any questions for Ms. Bogey? Yes, Councillor Brown.
Thank you. You refer to a
what you describe as a similar site in Barkway, which was refused. Can you please comment on whether that was a previously developed site, i.e. a brownfield site with hard standing, or whether it was a greenfield site?
Well, first of all, it's slightly confusing because this is not a brownfield site. In fact, even with the change to the MPPF, which Ms MacDonald has referred to, the MPPF goes on.
With due respect, I asked whether it was a greenfield site, the one in Barkway.
They're both greenfield sites, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions for Ms. Bogey from colleagues? No? Okay, great. I'm seeing no one indicate. Thank you very much for your time this evening, Ms. Bogey. I will now move on and we will hear from the applicant's representative, which is Mr. Simon Warner. Mr. Warner, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. My name is Simon Warner, Director of Warner Planning, and I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant this evening. In this speech, I'd like to take a few minutes to highlight the most important aspects of this high-quality development, make a positive contribution to this brownfield site. This application is a result of collaborative discussions with your planning officers and the statutory consultees, and whilst we note the comments from a few local residents, as noted in your officers' committee report, the application is policy compliant. The council is behind of its delivery of new housing, being below the 5-year housing land supply target, with current figures being approximately 3.9 year supply. This means the tilted balance set out in paragraph 11D of the MPPF applies, whereby any adverse effects that would arise from a proposed development would need to significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of providing new homes. Paragraph 73 of the MPPF sets out that small and medium-sized sites such as this can make an important contribution to meeting housing requirements. Paragraph 124 of the framework states that decisions should promote the effective use of land, meeting the need for new homes, such as this, on land that's previously development and brownfield. And the members will be aware the MPPF was updated in December 2024, with the definition of brownfield being updated as set out in the committee report, and this site meets that updated definition. It's important to note that the application is submitted following the previous application. The previous application was refused and dismissed at appeal. However, the appeal was only dismissed on design grounds regarding to the size of plot 3. The inspector stated the scale of plot 3 needed to be reduced, but was in agreement with planning officers of the otherwise clear conclusion of the benefits outweighing the harms. The inspector noted it is an eminently suitable location for residential development of 3 houses and make a positive contribution to the housing supply in the district, consistent with the objectives to boost housing supply contained in the framework. The proposal has revised the design of plot 3, which has been amended to reduce its scale, and these amendments address the inspector's comments. The depth of plot 3 has been reduced by 25%, the height has been reduced by 28%, and the floor area has been reduced by 34%. There are considerable benefits to development. These are the creation of 3 much-needed homes. Development of brownfield land is encouraged by the government, an appropriate use of the site with the removal of a vacant storage depot. No harm to the countryside, contribution to the council's housing land supply, a significant biodiversity net gain of 117% for habitats and 167% for hedgerows, a reduction of hard standing, an increase in green space, improved drainage, new landscaping and improved overall appearance of the site, and a more appropriate use, removing of commercial activity from this site. It also provides a connection to the adjacent footpath, improving its setting. There are no technical objections from any of the main statutory consultees, including Environmental Health, Hertfordshire Highways, Hertfordshire Ecology, or the Lead Local Flood Authority. In addition, there are no objections from the Council's Conservation and Archaeology advisors. The proposed dwellings vastly exceed the appropriate design standards, exceed the amenity standards and accessibility standards, and several conditions have been agreed with your officers to ensure the finer details of materials and landscaping will be discharged with the Council at the appropriate stage. The application will be supported by a Section 106 agreement to secure the contributions to ecology, and the drafting of this agreement is well advanced. We've had the application reviewed by an active planning barrister who confirms it's legally compliant and accords with the framework and the development plan. In conclusion, the proposal will make a positive contribution to the Council's housing supply, regenerate this brownfield site. There are no identified adverse impacts from the proposal. The proposal is policy compliant and will achieve overwhelming benefits. As a result, I therefore request you support your officer's objective and comprehensive assessment of scheme and grant planning permission in accordance with the recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warner. Over to members of the committee. Do you have questions for the applicant's agent? Yes, Councillor Brown.
Thank you. You state that it's an eminently suitable location for the development of 3 houses, but you make no mention of active travel routes or footpaths into the village. Could you comment about how someone might get to the centre of the village on foot? And if there's going to be, is there anything in the Section 106 agreement about upgrading any of those paths?
In terms of, as you rightfully note, and I think officers already noted, there is a connection to the public right of way to the adjacent of the site, which is part of a network of footpaths which link to a variety of locations in the village. So there is that opportunity. In terms of the Section 106, no, I don't believe anything's been requested from Hertfordshire County Council. So the officers just agreeing with me by the head, but yeah, nothing's been requested from the County Council.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Mental.
Thank you. Just so that I'm clear, is it correct that the site is currently derelict, or is it actually being used for something?
This site's currently vacant.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just kind of following on from Councillor Mental's point, could you remind us what the site was previously used for?
Yes, certainly, as previously used for sort of haulage and distribution.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions, colleagues? No, I'm seeing nobody indicate. Right, in that case, I shall pass back to Anne just to summarise any final points before we move into debate.
Thank you. There's nothing I'd like to come back on. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much. Right, colleagues, we have an officer's report before us this evening with a recommendation to grant permission. I would assume that any motion to grant permission would also be subject to the conditions set out in the supplementary, as well as the amended wording to condition 10, which Anne read out at the start of the meeting, of this item rather. However, colleagues, as always, I am happy to accept a motion either way, whichever way the committee want to take things to get us to debate. So over to you. Could I have someone propose a motion, please? Yes, Councillor Allen.
Purely for the purposes of moving on to debate, I propose a motion that we grant the application.
Great, thank you very much. Could I have a seconder, please? I see Councillor Peace.
I'm happy to second that and reserve the right. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, colleagues. And as a reminder, obviously, while we are mindful of previous cases, backgrounds, history, etc., this committee determines each application before it on the basis of that individual's application's merits in accordance with council policy, the NPPF that is in place at the time that we make our decision, etc. And should we start to stray or do something that is a little bit random, weird or wonderful, I'm sure that our senior planning manager and legal advisors will be able to assist us appropriately. Over to you, colleagues, to debate. Yes, Councillor Prescott.
I know those comments were directed at me, Chairman.
No, they're not at all, Martin.
I shall
not
try
at
and
all.
focus. I can see that this application will end up getting approved because if we don't approve it, it will win on appeal. That's fairly clear to me, and I wouldn't stand in the way of it. I'm not going to vote for it, but I'm quite happy to abstain. And the simple reason is that maybe a little old-fashioned, but I believe rules are there to be observed. And if this is outside the boundary of the village, then it shouldn't be developed. And that, I think, has been, the point was made both in the objectors that we've got in the report and also by the objector, the lady that came and spoke earlier on. It isn't within the boundary of the village. And to say, well, it's on the edge of the boundary, it's like me saying, well, yeah, I was doing 38 miles an hour, but it's nearly 30 miles an hour. You know, which rules do you either accept all the rules or none of the rules? And that, I think my point is that I would object to it on principle, notwithstanding any of the other matters that are raised. I don't appreciate us personalising an attack on our officer, however, because I think that's unwarranted, and I apologise on behalf.
Thank you very much, Councillor Prescott. I think you're preempted. I've preempted everything that everyone was going to say this evening. I've got notes everywhere of points to make. One of them that you've just touched on there for me was that obviously, while I hear what you've said and I appreciate how that feels, but we don't know how an inspector is going to determine any future appeal. And I would ask colleagues just to be mindful that we're determining the application before us. We do not have crystal balls. We cannot see into the future. And fear, nervousness, anxiety, preempting what the planning inspectorate may or may not do is not a material planning consideration and is not something that members should be basing their decision on when we're considering these applications. But Councillor Prescott does rightfully raise the tricky balancing act that we have to carry out between certain policies contained within our local plan versus the policies contained within the NPPF and the joys that I'm sure we're going to deal with as a committee many, many times when we're weighing the planning balance around this local authority's housing land supply at the current point in time, which stands at 3.9 years. So I think you are absolutely right to raise those conflicts, those policies, and we have all, as always, colleagues, got to manage that planning balance when we're determining our decision on this. If it's a brief point, you can come back on it.
Yes, it is. The point was raised in the report, and the applicant's agent made the same point about it adding to the housing supply. This is 3 houses. I mean, frankly, I don't buy that argument at all. We've given permission for hundreds and hundreds of houses, and we'll continue to do so where it is appropriate. I don't think that's a compelling argument at all.
There we go. Thank you very much. Councillor Tyson.
I'm not quite sure whether I'm going to be random, weird, or wonderful now, but I was going to refer to some of the remarks from the appeal inspector, and so just particularly to say that I agree with those comments that the site currently, and I'll quote, is unsightly and discordant in that setting. It is a brownfield site. I'm slightly concerned about the fact that it's technically outside the settlement boundary, but it has had a previous use as a depot for various industrial items. So I think at the moment, the visual enhancements that would be represented by this development is quite clear to my mind. And again, the quote from the appeal inspector is that the site is eminently suitable for a residential development of 3 houses is the comment that I would agree with. And I can only see that the one change between this proposal and that which was rejected previously is to do with the design and the scale of that somewhat over dominant plot 3, was it? The big manor house, which has been redesigned and reduced in scale. So I will happily vote in favour of this application.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mantle.
I think the policy of not allowing development outside the settlement boundaries is a valid one. It's an attempt to stop the sort of ribbon development and uncontrolled spreading out of settlements. But I don't think that applies in this case. I'm very puzzled as to why it is regarded, given that it is a developed site, a derelict site, an eyesore, why it is actually regarded as outside the village boundary. It surely is part of the village. It's a community. It's a facility which has existed, something that's existed for years. And to say that it's outside the village is really stretching. So I've no doubt that I take the point about the 3 houses is neither here nor there and immaterial, but I think we ought to be looking at what's a useful use of this, what otherwise derelict eyesore site.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to Councillor Peace.
Thank you. I mean, I agree with all of the comments made by Councillor Tyson and Councillor Mantle. The one thing I would want to avoid is something like this becoming a precedent that people could say, well, you allow this site outside the settlement boundary, so therefore you must allow this site outside the settlement boundary. But I think in this case, as we're not looking at a greenfield site and we're looking at a brownfield site, that anybody wanting to try to use this as a precedent on a greenfield site, it would not work. And as we're always told, we should consider each case on its merits. And therefore, I can't see any reason to refuse this.
Councillor Mason. I know. I'm going to because she's reserved her right, so I'm just giving her full opportunity.
Okay. No, I would agree with the previous speakers. I mean, it is an eyesore clearly at the moment, and I can only wonder what people would feel if somebody had come out with an application to turn it into a large haulage site, which it was before. And I can't, I can only agree with my colleagues. What's being proposed seems to be better than what is there at the moment or what it was before. But
Thank you very much. Now I'll come back to Councillor Brown, who had reserved her right.
No,
Oh, you had
I
to.
didn't. I didn't. No, that was
that was Louise. I'm so sorry. I've lost.
It's okay because it means I can respond to everything that's already been said. So
Yes.
I agree with much of what's been said. I think the design of these three houses is really good. I think it fits in well with the rural landscape and the sort of barn style. I like the fact that it's high quality and sustainable. The only aspect where I think it isn't sustainable is the access into the village. I know this route very well because I live very close and have done for many years. And I remember when the planning officer recommended refusal on grounds that it would not be safe for children to walk to school from here. So I welcome that there's going to be a connection to the footpath. I do still worry a little bit about that. I don't think I would want small children walking along that road. I don't think it's very safe. It's a shame that the highways don't want to extend the 30 beyond it. Having said that, the exit is right next to the 30 sign. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. I agree about settlement boundaries and why they're there, but I don't accept that this shouldn't be developed in the sense that it already is developed. It's a brownfield site. It's not the same as the Barkway site, which is a greenfield site. So I do agree that it is appropriate site for three houses. I wish the footpaths were a little bit better than they are. And I wish the highways would extend their 30 miles an hour. But I would not want to see a return to haulage and distribution out of that and having HGVs go through the village. I think that would be a lot worse. So I think what we have before us is a very well-designed scheme, and it has been amended according to the comments that have been made by the inspector, and I think it deserves our approval, so I should be voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and apologies for the confusion, Councillor Brown. I will do my best not to let that happen again. Right, Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to agree with the other comments that have been made. It's a brownfield site. It could well do with some improvement considering what it looks like right now. I think it's also quite interesting that by doing the development, we're actually going to end up with more green than we currently have right now. So that would be quite nice. And not going to be random, weird and wonderful, so I'm just going to leave it at that.
You can try if you want to be. I don't mind. Okay, lovely. Councillor Fernandez.
Yes, I just wanted to agree with the things that have been said by my colleagues. And particularly, I think it can only be positive to develop this site. It's obviously a bit of an eyesore and it is a brownfield site that's been previously developed. And this development is very sympathetic, and there's going to be a lot of green space, and it's going to actually result in a massive biodiversity net gain, which can only be a positive thing. So I will be voting in favour.
Thank you very much. I'm seeing nobody else indicating that they wish to speak. So I'll sum up. We've had a motion that the application is granted subject to the conditions that are set out in the supplementary report, as well as the amended wording to condition 10 that was read out at the start of this particular item. I think colleagues have explored and distinguished this from previous applications and are very clear that this planning committee determines each application on its own merit and is not bound by in the form of precedent by previous decisions taken in any event. I think that the committee has all had the opportunity, and I'm certain members have read the planning inspector's previous decision on the matter, which has been provided in the published form as part of the papers for this evening. And I'm satisfied that the officer report also sets out the clear provisions of the amended national planning policy framework, which was revised in December 2024, which is the current framework that we are considering our applications against, and are cognizant of those points. Having considered all of those matters, I think that it's right that the committee moves forward to vote on this item. Nobody else has interrupted or indicated they want to speak, so can we have a vote, please, James?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Okay, that moves us on then to item number 7, which is another tree preservation item. I said that we don't get these very often, but they seem to be coming by like buses at the moment. So this one is reference TPO/216 Garden Fields, Offley, Hertfordshire, and this is confirmation of a tree preservation order. Thomas Howe is presenting this for us.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. I have one update. In my committee report, there was some sections carried over from a previous report, so I'm just seeking to clarify those points with you. At paragraph 6.1, it makes reference to the tree belts requiring urgent works and that there are standing dead trees or trees in decline. That's not correct, and the paragraph should instead refer to the fact that the applicants can submit evidence to support and justify works to trees that are covered by a tree preservation order should they need maintenance or any felling due to emergency works, etc. And point 9.2 should be disregarded as it makes reference to the trees, the condition of the trees, meaning they require felling and replacement. And at point 9.3, it makes reference to the trees not being protected if members choose not to save the order. This is incorrect as the tree group is actually covered by an existing TPO, I think served previously. And instead, in this instance, we're seeking to remove 2 trees, one from the eastern end and one from the garden of number 31 Garden Fields, and to add one more tree adjacent to a public parking area at the western end of the group. The reason for this is an application was submitted for works to the tree at the western end, and it was realised that the tree was of value and was worthy of protection, and therefore we're here to reserve the TPO. So as I say, the trees are presently protected and we're seeking to reserve the order. That is all. Please can I have the presentation. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is the TPO polygon. East is to the right-hand side of the map. West is to the left-hand side. Next slide, please. This is the tree at the western end of the group. The tree seeking to be added to the group TPO as viewed from the public parking area. Next slide, please. And then this is a zoomed in shot of the wider group with the new tree on the right hand and the wider group in the center of image. Next slide, please. And then this is taken from, I believe, the back of, say, number 30 Garden Fields on the way to, I believe it is the lawns at the back of Garden Fields. So the group extends to the left. The next slide, please. And this is panned to the right. So the right-hand tree is sought to be removed. The tree on the extreme left, I believe, is sought to be removed. And the one on the right was observed in September with yellow leaves, while the others were in full leaf, and was considered to be in poor health. Next slide, please. And then this is a view of that tree to be removed with the wider group behind. Next slide, please. Oh, that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Do members of the committee have any questions? Yes, Councillor Peace.
So the one tree that's going to be added, who is responsible for, who owns that and who's responsible for maintaining that?
I believe there's a management company for the site, and I believe that it's a residents association. Oh, yes, gets a nod. That I believe the management company is responsible.
Yes, Councillor Fernandez.
The tree that's in ill health and is going to be removed, will it be replaced with an equivalent deciduous tree, or will it just be left without a tree there?
It's not proposed to be felled. It's proposed to be removed from the group.
Right,
But
okay.
so it wouldn't be protected by a TPO, so we wouldn't have, so we wouldn't be able to condition its replacement.
Okay, any further questions, colleagues? No, right. In that case, I shall move us on. We have one member of the public who's objecting to this TPO, and that's Claire McNulty. Claire, you've got 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Claire McNulty, and I'm a resident of Garden Fields, living directly adjacent to one of the trees that is subject to the proposed TPO. As outlined in our previous objections submitted to Thomas Howe via email in July, November and December 2024, I'm here again to formally object to the inclusion of a specific tree located on land adjacent to 37 in this TPO, the tree in the car park at the western end. I believe it is unnecessary and may in fact hinder the effective management of the tree. This tree stands on land that is already overseen by Heritage Gardens Management Company Limited. The board consists of 9 directors, all residents of the estate, and any decisions regarding pruning or maintenance must be approved by them. This ensures a thorough and considered approach to tree care with proper consultation built into the process. Additionally, a professional property management company is engaged to carry out and oversee works, providing further assurance that the tree is managed responsibly and to a high standard. This is not a neglected or at-risk tree. It is appreciated by residents, enhances the visual appeal of the car park and surrounding area, and has already been maintained under professional guidance. Our concern is that adding a TPO introduces another layer of approval, requiring consent from the council in addition to the existing management structure. The current process already takes time, and in situations where urgent action may be required, such as after a storm, additional delays could pose a risk to the safety or to the health of the tree. Offaly is situated on a hill, and if you've ever been to Offaly, you're aware that it's exposed to strong winds, making the ability to act quickly especially important. We all value the tree and want it to be protected, but that protection already exists. Adding a TPO doesn't improve the safeguarding of the tree. It simply complicates and slows down what is already a careful and responsible management process. In short, the tree in the managed land car park is safe. It is well looked after, and there is already a strong framework of oversight in place. A TPO does not offer additional benefit, only added bureaucracy. It is not expedient to place a TPO on this tree. If I may, I'll also like to briefly raise some points on behalf of my neighbour Emma James, who lives at number 32 Garden Fields. Unfortunately, due to the short notice of this meeting, with the letter only arriving by post at 11 a.m. yesterday and a 5 p.m. deadline yesterday to register, I'm the only affected resident being able to attend and speak. Emma has serious concerns about the safety risk posed by the large oak trees in the neighbouring gardens covered by this TPO. These trees are tall, mature, and regularly shed sizable branches, some as long as 4 feet and up to 2 inches thick. This poses a direct risk to children playing in nearby gardens, including her own. At the moment, pruning hazardous branches can be done promptly when needed. However, a TPO would introduce delays that could prevent timely action and potentially compromise safety. As she points out, under the Occupiers Liability Act 1957, there's a duty of care to maintain a safe environment, and the TPO could hinder her ability to meet that responsibility. She also questions whether the TPO is truly necessary, given that the trees are already healthy and well maintained, with no plans to fell or drastically alter them. From her perspective, the TPO adds little benefit whilst increasing the difficulty of managing the trees safely and responsibly. Thank you again for your time and for considering Emma James' concerns about the trees in individual gardens alongside my own concerns about the tree in the managed car park adjacent to number 37. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do members of the committee have any questions for Ms McNulty? Yes, Councillor Billing.
Can I just clarify roughly how long does it take you guys to get someone to chop the tree up?
So I believe the problem with the
currently how long?
So I believe I'm not on the directors board, so I can't answer that directly. Excuse the, but As far as I'm aware, it goes through the directors. They're happy to make sure the gardens are maintained, so they approve it, and then either it will go through to the management company, who will then speak to the gardeners or employ whoever it is that maintains the trees, or the directors will sort that out themselves. So at the moment, it's either the directors straight away do it, or the directors then have to speak to the management company. But I'm not entirely sure of that arrangement.
Can I come back? So obviously, let's say it takes 10 days, hypothetically. Do you know roughly how long with the TPO in place it would be added on? I saw something here about 5 days if it's safety risk.
For 5 days? Apologies, I don't have that.
I've got it down here that if there's a safety risk, there can be a 5-day notice to the local planning authority to perform prompt termination of emergency works necessary.
Okay, so then that would have to go. I'm guessing. I'm guessing.
No, that's fine.
I don't know the answer to that. I'm not an agricultural expert. I'm not a tree expert. All I know is that it's anything we try to get done on our estate is always held up because there are 9 directors. Everything needs to be done through them. It's getting contact to them, which is can be quite laboursome, and also then in terms of property contacting the property management company. If anyone ever else exists on these sort of estates, the property management companies aren't the most thorough and quick at responding. So things have always, in my experience, needed chasing. But unfortunately, I can't answer those questions. Apologies.
No, that's fine. I think there's another side to that question as well, which it might be beneficial, Thomas or Sean, if you can come back on just and sort of explain the process that residents would need to go through if they did need to prune or chop back branches when we come back to you after questions and etc. etc. Lovely. Councillor Prescott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It really is an extension of where I think that my colleague was going with that. If we had a situation where there was wind damage and there was a limb of some huge great limb was in danger of falling down and smashing through a roof, a house or whatever, my common sense would suggest that you could just do the work with, obviously you'd have to have the evidence and all the rest of it, do the work and apply, if you like, for the equivalent of a retrospective permission to do it. But and I'm asking the wrong person really, but is that something the council would countenance if there's something that is clearly dangerous and needs to be done? The following morning, there's a bit about to fall off a tree. Is that something, I know, frankly, I would just simply chop it off and take my chances, but I'm not allowed to say that.
I think that's an eminently clippable quote there, Martin. Thank you very much. I'm not going to ask you to come back on that one, Claire, just because I think that is very much a question for officers to advise on when we come back before the debate. Very valid point, building on Sadie's question as well, and I think that's useful to consider and to refresh the committee's mind on these. I'm also just skimming through the government guide to TPOs, which ahead of all of the sections likes to quote bits from literature, including little bits from Shakespeare, which is very, very lovely and really, really not helpful when I'm looking for quick answers to support the committee on this. Right, Councillor Mason.
I was going to make a quip about Burnham Wood then, but I won't. I think, to be fair, I think Councillor Prescott's pretty much got where I was going on it, which is, and it's completely unfair to throw at you. I think Claire says perhaps the officers need to answer. Yeah, I think that's kind of broadly was going to be my question. If there's emergency work that needs to, I'm very worried by what you said about. We're not here to discuss the existing structure, but I worry about, having lived under a very big tree once. I worry about it being dangerous stuff and it being difficult to do it. But I guess, like Martin, I want perhaps some clarification from someone as to what that structure is and whether the TPO is going to make it better or worse, because it doesn't sound it's great in a moment.
Yeah, it would be. I'm not a director, but one of my neighbours is a director, and as far as I know, the directors are only aware that this TPO process is something's happening, but they haven't been aware of this. So I don't know what that means in regards to the tree that's on managed land. Should any of that information about this be going to the directors and the management company for that? And if so, has that happened? That would be another question maybe that I haven't included. I don't know if they have been notified.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. I'm not seeing anyone else indicate that they've got questions. So I think kind of there were a number of points that were raised there that the committee could use some advice and a bit of a steer on, and maybe some additional background as well to the purpose, the reason that we have tree preservation orders, and how people can maintain trees going forward once those are in place. So throw back to the officers to come up before we move to debate. Do you want to go? Yeah.
Yes, the purpose of the tree preservation order is to ensure that we have control over works to trees before people do it, which includes felling of trees if the trees are considered to be make a positive contribution to the amenity of the area. It does require people to apply. The application is relatively simple and straightforward, the matter that was raised with regards to the emergency works. Now, there is provisions for people to give 5 working days notice for emergency work, unless, however, that the danger is immediate, in which case take evidence, take a photograph and undertake the work, provide the evidence to us, and that would cover the matter. But we're not there to endanger people. And there's provisions within the orders that allow for immediate work to take place where there's imminent danger. Unless there's any other questions, I think.
Are colleagues sort of happy that sort of guidance broadly summarises the answer to the questions you're asking, Councillor Prescott?
Yes, thank you. I think it does. I think what it says is there's the council will apply an element of common sense to it. So if there's an imminent risk to life or property, as I said, take as much evidence as you can and then just do the work. Personally, to clarify, I'm very much in favour of TPOs. I think they're a great idea for the exact reason that Sean given. There are always going to be anomalies. I had a dead sycamore tree in my garden and I had to apply for permission to cut it down, and it had been dead for years and I could never understand it. But I do. These are the exceptions. And I think the point you're making about being able to manage, I don't see why having the existence of a TPO would actually inhibit that at all. And the specific case you mentioned, or cases you mentioned where there was imminent danger, I think the answer is that you know, if you're convinced that there is imminent danger and you have the evidence to support it, you should do the work.
Thank you. I'm going to allow this to run a little bit outside the norms for committee procedure, just because I think it is beneficial, given that TPOs are not something that we deal with on a regular basis. And I'm aware that we've got members present this evening who didn't sit on the last TPO application that we had. And also that considered a number of other points, which included comments around amenity as well as kind of the danger and the maintenance side of things. So I think we're kind of in a place, officer colleagues, of a bit more extended questioning and backwards and forwards before I move us into debate. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. I think one of the issues here that's being presented isn't necessarily that the TPO is going to hold things up. I think it's the 9 directors that have to be gone through in order to deal with anything with the tree. Would the TPO supersede the 9 directors? Because that seems to be the bigger issue, but not what we're discussing tonight, I understand.
Yes, insofar as the TPO is protected by the tree preservation order, is a matter of statutory protection, and there are obviously, if one does work to a tree protected by a tree preservation order, there are consequences to that, which can include a fine of up to £20,000. I've never come across such a fine for felling a tree, but that's the ultimate deterrent, as it were, for people to go and fell trees that are protected by tree preservation orders. Most of the works that people carry out to tree preservation orders, people apply for, and in most cases we actually approve those works, or tell them to perhaps change some of what they're proposing to do, and we'd approve that. But as I say, most applications are actually approved rather than refused. It's just a means of controlling trees. But in my view, the main benefit from protecting from tree preservation orders is to prevent the unnecessary felling of trees that make a positive contribution to the amenity of the area.
So if I may follow up on that. So if there is a dangerous issue, because there is a TPO and then it comes under those kind of arrangements of if there is an imminent danger, there is a massive problem that needs to be dealt with quickly, and then as you've described, to record it and then ask
Yes.
permission retrospectively, that can just be dealt with and done because the TPO supersedes the say of the 9 directors.
Well, it's a matter for the 9 directors as to how they
Yeah.
do these things. Well, under normal circumstances, if a tree is clearly a danger, there's been a storm, for example, and there's large branches hanging off it, or whatever it may be, then if you take evidence of the state of the tree before undertaking the works, then you've covered yourself against any kind of action by the council. We're not there to be unnecessarily punitive in regards to these matters. With the evidence and the provisions of the tree preservation order does allow for people to carry out emergency work in the event of a storm, for example. What we would want is the evidence, because what we don't want people to do is say, oh, well, it was in danger after the fact, and there's no evidence to suggest that it was, and they just went and chopped down a tree that's protected by a TPO. So provided you have the evidence, then you should be reasonably protected against any kind of action by the council.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm continuing just to skim the guidance. Chapter 6 deals with issues around felling and potentially maintenance. It's also preceded by a quote from Strawberry Fields. Do not ask me why. This is the most bizarre guidance document I've ever seen. However, what the guidance does say is when it comes down to residents taking emergency action, so for example, removing overhanging branches that pose an immediate danger, the courts, when they're considering any liability under a TPO, will take the prudent citizen approach. It's a question of fact. They will look at all of the circumstances and take that common sense viewpoint. So I hope that provides a little bit of reassurance to you, Claire, in particular, but also to colleagues on the committee. Councillor Brown.
So I just wanted to check something with officers, because what I heard from our officer was that these trees are covered by an existing TPO and that the proposal is to remove 2 trees from that and add 1. So my question is really, what does this actually change apart from the fact that there are 2 trees out and 1 tree in? There is an existing TPO. So presumably it's not going to make a great deal of difference.
It wouldn't make a difference to the others that are covered by the group tree preservation order. It merely extends the group to include the one to the west of that group, and remove 2 to the east. It makes no difference to those in the middle. Really. They're currently covered by.
So I had understood correctly then. So most of the trees, it won't make any difference to. It's just the 1 extra that's added, and the ones that shouldn't be in it because they're actually not in good shape are being removed. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor McDonnell.
My question was similar, and I was going to ask if I could be awkward, if we could just have a look at the photograph of the tree that's being brought in again, which is the one on the managed car park.
Western end.
I just wanted to see it in relation to the buildings again. It's overhanging very slightly, isn't it? That garden right next to it. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. So To clarify, my main objection was for that tree being not included due to it's not expedient to include it. I believe my neighbor, so I'm 37, which is I didn't really want to put that on YouTube, but I'm 37, which is the one that's right next to it. The comment by my neighbor were for the trees that are currently under the TPO, which there's been a lot of confusion as to whether or not they actually were under a TPO. I think some of the neighbours don't think they are under a TPO. This is a consultation process and it's going to decide whether or not they are going to be under a TPO. And so this is probably new to some of them to understand that actually theirs are under a TPO and it's the addition of this one that's at the end. So this one currently overhangs into my garden and I fully understand about if there is danger and I take on board that, and that's just common sense really, I think, like you said. But the main thing for this one then, I guess this is the only thing we're talking about really, is that it's not expedient to do it. It would add a level of bureaucracy, rightly so. I'm not entirely sure how much bureaucracy there is, but this is kind of the problem that you have in general with estates and directors, and then going through a property management company and then also finding gardeners, etc. And then they've also got to make sure they pass it on to the council. I've got to rely on the property management company to do that. But it would have been beneficial if the directors had been notified about this, so they could come along and provide more detailed information. Again, they might have been, it might have slipped then they're under their radar, but I'm not aware if they have or not.
Okay, thank you. Tom, did you want to come back on?
Yeah. So the trees are presently protected by TPO reference 00204 2022, which was saved on or confirmed on the 6th of April 2023. And on the matter of expediency, the reason that this TPO is being reserved is because an application was received for this tree. And at the time it was realised that it was not within the group. So there was considered to be expediency because works were sought to the tree. So that's the kind of the chain of events that have led to this one being served. So yeah, that's it really. Thank you.
Okay, and just for clarity on that, Tom, could you confirm who the application for works came from?
I believe it was the management company or somebody on behalf of the management company. Or do you?
Process, I came up from a neighbour inquiring about whether or not there was a tree preservation order on the trees, and I believe there was probably, again, it would be handy to have someone from the board of directors who approved all of this, but I believe that they applied for planning permission to address the tree because they weren't aware of what the situation was. No one knew, and so they were just covering their backs. Okay. But again, this is me saying something that I'm not entirely sure of, and it's not facts on my behalf.
Yeah, and of course, unfortunately, this committee isn't here to resolve disputes and deal with the relationship between management companies, residents, this planning authority, etc. I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate that it's a challenging space, though. Councillor Prescott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It strikes me that the management committee, I mean, I do entirely agree that the committee with a dozen people on it is going to be a lot slower than getting permission from the council to do some work to a tree. But it strikes me that the management committee was already following the process, even though the tree wasn't covered by a TPO. So it's kind of a bit disingenuous to now say we don't want it covered by a TPO when they were working on the basis that it was anyway.
I sense we're moving away from questions and into debate, colleagues.
Well,
yes?
could I,
no.
Madam Chairman, could I move that we accept the officer's recommendation in that case?
Oh, I've got a mover before I accept that and we move into a debate. Was there any final points, officers, that you wanted to come back on? No. Okay, I'm going to be really mean to officers, and unless there is any need that I think exists during the course of debate, I'm going to assume that their contribution is pretty much done for the time being. I will bring them back in if there is a technical matter that arises. Right, Councillor Prescott has moved that the application for the TPO be granted, and he set out a brief reason for that. Councillor Brown, are you seconding?
Very happy to second and reserve my right to speak.
Lovely. I will make a note. Councillor Brown has this time reserved the right to speak. Okay, colleagues. While I'm writing that down, does anybody wish to contribute to the debate? I'm watching the screen with one eye. Yes, Councillor Allen.
Okay, just given off the back of the questions I asked earlier, but given that as we've said, the TPO supersedes any decisions by the directors, part of the guidance includes that should be that any issues regarding significant danger, damage that needs to be tended to urgently, and that retrospective permission can be given with evidence for any work done on the tree, means that realistically it shouldn't actually take any longer than it already does to deal with any urgent issues with said tree, because it's still got to go through and end up having to go through, at the moment, having to go through 9 directors, which I still think is wild, but there we are.
Yeah. Councillor Peace.
Yeah, as Councillor Allen said, the only thing I would add is it does rather sound like a letter needs to go to all of the residents who are directly near these trees to explain exactly what the situation is. And I know that's outside of the scope of this application, but it does sound like somebody needs to confirm that there is a TPO on these trees and this is what you need to do.
I think that sounds like a very sensible request to make to colleagues in the planning team. And while I appreciate you're all very, very busy and have lots of work to do, it does seem beneficial given the confusion that exists a lot of the time around TPO. So I would kindly ask that you consider asking that to your to-do list, Tom. You don't need to respond. Okay, great. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on debate on this item? No. Councillor Brown, you reserved your right to speak. Would you like to exercise it? No, nothing further to say. Okay. All right. Right, we've had a motion proposed. It's been seconded. Members have debated. I would thank Claire and officers for the back and forth and the evidence that you provided and the conversational nature of tonight as well. I think it has supported and assisted the committee in considering this as thoroughly as we're able to. Right, can we have a vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. That motion's carried unanimously.
Could you what, Councillor Prescott?
Turn my microphone off. Now that we've accepted the officer's recommendation, the business is done. But I did think it was a little confusing or a little bit disturbing that nobody seemed to be notified in good time to turn up, because it was made, the point was made many times. There may be many more directors than anybody would think is necessary, but 1 or 2 of them should have been here.
I think that's a point that's been noted by officers, and I think we did have a conversation on the last application as well around notice requirements. I think that's a piece of work to be taken forward by the team outside of this meeting, and maybe just a note about general community engagement and the view of members in respect of that moving forward. But yes, thank you. Noted. Right. I will move us on then to our next item. We haven't had a break. We're on a relatively short meeting. It's just over an hour. Does anyone need a break? We're happy to continue. Happy to continue. Lovely. Right. Item number 8 is Planning Enforcement Quarterly Report. This is going to be in 2 parts. I see no reason for us to take part 2 first and keep people hanging on online unnecessarily. So we'll deal with part 1 and then I'll move us into the part 2 item. Okay, great. So Christella, would you like to present?
Thank you, Chair. I just offer a short update on the quarterly report that is provided for members. This quarter also picks up the summary of the work that was carried out throughout 2024. I just draw your attention, please, to paragraph 6. So I've just got a short update for you. 6.2 tells you that the work that we're doing in relation to publicity and information for the Section 106 Our Section 106 monitoring officer has been working exceptionally hard and is now provided information that is already on the website. And the further update for you is that the infrastructure funding statement has been approved. It's scheduled also for publication, and it's just going through the internal review processes before that goes on the website as well. Just another piece of information for you in relation to notices and appeals. So 2 enforcement notices have been served this year. One for the Cabinet in Reed, another one, 1A High Street in Gravelly. We have received appeals for both of them. One under the written representations procedure and the other one as a hearing. And that's my update. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do you colleagues have any questions or points to raise on the Part 1 report? Yes, Councillor Mantle.
Clearly, enforcement of Section 106 is very important in the public view. Are you sufficiently resourced to do it properly?
Thank you for your question. In terms of the work that we've been doing, it's picking up a lot of the work that was taking place already. Part of that is bringing together and establishing processes so that we've got clear links from policy and also with DM in terms of how that's going to happen. There are internal conversations that are taking place to make sure that we have an established clear understanding within all areas of the team so that we bring that together in a way that we've got continuity and consistency and understanding around that. As the situation currently stands, we feel that we are sufficiently resourced, but we are mindful that that situation may change in the near future and it could potentially be quite quickly. So as part of that, we have established really clear procedure guidance so that when we are in a position, if we do need to recruit, then we can kind of hit the ground running from that position, and also taking on board examples of good practice that we are collating from other authorities as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you colleagues have any further questions on the Part 1 item? No? Okay, all right then. As this is an item just for noting, I'm going to look at James in case he tells me I'm wrong, but I don't think that we need to vote on it, do we? No, we don't. Good. However, what we do need, though, is a vote on the following, which is item number 9, exclusion of press and public. So I would ask the committee to consider passing the following resolution, that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that the following report will involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 7 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the said act as amended. I think I have just proposed that. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Brown, thank you very much. I'm going to assume that colleagues don't need to debate or question this, so I'll move us to a vote.
Chair, that motion's carried unanimously. If we can just wait 2 seconds while we move us into private session.
Thank you. Just for my reference, James, do we still need to come back to close the meeting? Okay. So we will come back online after the part 2 just to close out the meeting, but there won't be any substantive business at that time. All right. Right. Thank you very much, colleagues. Okay. That item is dealt with and noted. The only thing that remains for us now is to officially close the meeting and to note that the next meeting of the Planning Control Committee will be on the 15th of April 2025 at 7 p.m. Thank you very much. That's a Tuesday, by the way. I'll say that again. That is a Tuesday, not a Thursday, the 15th of April. Is it a Thursday?